Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most powerful statements to come out of Europe in recent months, Sweden's message to Russia. Get out of Ukraine. This bold stance marks a turning point not just for Sweden, but for the entire Nordic region, as it steps up against Moscow's aggression with unprecedented determination. What makes this so important is that Sweden, a country long known for its neutrality and cautious diplomacy, has now become one of the most vocal critics of Vladimir Putin's war. And that shift carries enormous implications for the balance of power in Europe and for NATO's future. To understand why this moment is so significant, we need to look at how far Sweden has come. For over 2 centuries, Sweden stayed out of direct military conflicts, avoiding alliances and focusing on peace, democracy, and stability. Even during the Cold War, when the Soviet Union loomed over Europe, Sweden carefully balanced its policies, defending its independence but never formally joining NATO. That long tradition of neutrality became part of Sweden's identity. But everything changed in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. Suddenly, neutrality was no longer an option. The brutality of Russia's actions, the bombings of cities, the civilian casualties, the forced deportations, shook Sweden's leadership and its people. The invasion didn't just threaten Ukraine, it was seen as a threat to all of Europe. For countries close to Russia's borders like Sweden and Finland, the war raised fears that Moscow's aggression might not stop at Ukraine. If Putin succeeded there, what would stop him from pushing further into Eastern Europe or testing the security of the Baltic Sea region? That fear was the spark that pushed Sweden to abandon 2 centuries of neutrality and apply for NATO membership, a move that was once unthinkable. But joining NATO was only the beginning. In recent months, Sweden has become increasingly outspoken in its criticism of Russia's continued war. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson and Foreign Minister Tobias Billström have made it clear that Moscow's aggression will not be tolerated, and that peace will only come when Russia completely withdraws from Ukrainian territory. The message is firm: no compromises, no acceptance of occupation, and no return to business as usual with Putin's regime. What's even more remarkable is how Sweden's stance has evolved from quiet diplomacy to direct confrontation in both words and actions. Sweden has sent military aid to Ukraine, including advanced weapon systems, ammunition, and training for Ukrainian soldiers. It has also supported strict sanctions on Russia, targeting its energy exports, banks, and oligarchs. The Swedish government has called out Russian propaganda and disinformation campaigns that try to divide Europe and weaken Western resolve. This is a Sweden that's no longer sitting on the sidelines. It's fully engaged in defending the principles of democracy and sovereignty. This transformation didn't happen overnight. Inside Sweden, public opinion shifted dramatically after the invasion. Polls showed that before February 2022, most Swedes opposed NATO membership. But within weeks of Russia's attack, support skyrocketed. The images of destruction in Mariupol, Bucha, and other Ukrainian cities left no doubt that Putin's ambitions were not just political, they were imperial. The Swedish people understood that standing by meant accepting a world where force replaces law and intimidation replaces diplomacy. That realization turned fear into resolve. Sweden's message, "Get out of Ukraine," is more than a moral statement. It's a demand rooted in international law, human rights, and the belief that no nation has the right to invade and occupy another. It also signals that smaller nations, when united, can play a major role in defending global stability. Sweden may not be a superpower, but its voice carries moral weight, and its actions show courage at a time when the world needs it most. Another key element of Sweden's growing assertiveness is its partnership with neighboring countries. Together with Finland, Norway, and Denmark, Sweden has formed a united Nordic defense front. These nations share intelligence, conduct joint military exercises, and coordinate responses to Russian provocations in the Baltic Sea. The message to Moscow is clear: the era of Nordic neutrality is over. Any attempt to intimidate or destabilize Northern Europe will be met with a strong collective defense. Moscow, of course, has not taken kindly to Sweden's new position. Russian officials have issued threats, warning that Sweden's NATO membership would have consequences. Russian warplanes have violated Swedish airspace, and there have been reports of cyber attacks targeting Swedish infrastructure. But rather than backing down, Sweden has responded with even more determination. Its military is now being modernized at a pace not seen in decades. Defense spending has increased significantly, and the country is re-establishing conscription and reinforcing its coastal defenses. For Sweden, this is not just about Ukraine, it's about the future of Europe. If Russia's invasion succeeds, it would shatter the post-World War II order that has kept peace on the continent for generations. It would send a message to other authoritarian regimes that aggression pays off. But if Ukraine prevails, supported by countries like Sweden, it will prove that democracy can withstand even the most brutal assaults. That's why Sweden's leaders continue to emphasize that their support for Ukraine is not charity. It's self-defense, in a broader sense. There's also an emotional dimension to this story. The Swedish people have shown extraordinary solidarity with Ukrainians. Thousands of refugees have found safety in Sweden. Volunteers have raised millions in humanitarian aid, and civil society groups continue to campaign for stronger sanctions and justice for war crimes. Sweden's cities are filled with Ukrainian flags, on public buildings, private homes, and even sports arenas. It's a powerful reminder that this isn't just a war between two countries. It's a struggle between two visions of the world, one based on freedom and the other on fear. In his recent remarks, Prime Minister Kristersson said something that captures this perfectly. Russia must understand that its aggression unites the free world instead of dividing it. And that's exactly what has happened. Instead of breaking Europe apart, Putin's invasion has pushed nations closer together, from NATO allies in the West to the once neutral states of the North. Sweden's decision to take a stand has inspired others to do the same, proving that moral clarity still matters in international politics. But Sweden's boldness also comes with risks. By aligning firmly with NATO and opposing Russia so openly, Sweden has become a target for hybrid warfare, cyber attacks, disinformation, and political manipulation. Moscow's strategy is to spread fear and division, to make democracies doubt themselves. Yet Sweden's response shows that resilience and unity are the best weapons against that kind of aggression. The Swedish government has strengthened cybersecurity, increased public awareness about fake news, and built stronger partnerships with NATO allies to counter Russian interference. Looking at the bigger picture, Sweden's message to Russia, "Get out of Ukraine," represents a broader shift in global politics. It's part of a new era where smaller democratic nations are no longer content to let great powers dictate the rules. Instead, they are stepping up, taking responsibility, and standing firm in defense of freedom. The moral authority of countries like Sweden is becoming just as important as the military might of larger nations. As the war in Ukraine drags on, the world is watching closely. Sweden's role will continue to grow, both inside NATO and in the international community. Its leadership, its courage, and its unwavering message to Moscow send hope to those fighting on the front lines, and a warning to those who believe they can use force to reshape borders. So when Sweden says, "Get out of Ukraine," it's not just a demand to end a war. It's a declaration that Europe will not return to the dark days of empire and conquest. It's a promise that freedom, democracy, and sovereignty still matter, and that even in the face of aggression, the world will not stay silent. And that's what makes Sweden's stand so powerful. It reminds us that the strength of a nation isn't measured only by its weapons or its wealth, but by its willingness to defend what's right. In the end, Sweden's message to Russia echoes far beyond Europe. It's a call to the entire world to stand together for peace, justice, and the right of every nation to decide its own future. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay informed, stay aware, and stand for truth. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates right here on Frontline Report.